Dear friends, welcome to the Mindful Maya podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to understanding the phenomenon of the mind and be free from its conditions. The series features various talk shows given by the mystic Maya around the world in what he calls the conversation from the silence to the silence.
What happens in meditation is that as we go deeper inside, a phenomenon usually not seen or experienced during the daytime or while falling asleep, this phenomenon becomes apparent and visible, not in a sense of seeing as thoughts or dreams or imaginations. It is experienced. The experience is of the untouched or previously unexplored reality, or let's say maybe previously unexplored reality of the individual going inwards. This experience comes to the surface, and this is not the surface of the mind where there are different thoughts. This comes to the surface of the experience, or it becomes apparent to the person going inwards. Whereas this same phenomenon naturally occurs as we fall asleep. As the mind goes through the phases of falling asleep, this occurs every time, whenever anyone falls asleep. Now, as we go deeper inside, or let's say as we enter into the calm states of the mind, there are things that either goes away from us or our perception of those things goes away from us. Things like the space around us, maybe the room or wherever we are, the perception of having a body. So the process is, as we close our eyes, first, obviously the room or the space we are physically located vanishes from us, yet the sound remains of that space. And soon, between the sound of the space and the moving thoughts inside, or the very thin layer or symbiosis of the sound of our space where we are and the thoughts that we have, between the dance of these two different states or different realities, we find ourselves moving in and out of our own state of perceiving the reality. In other words, sometimes our focus is on the thoughts, and sometimes the focus is on the outer space whenever there is a sound or noise coming from outside or inside the room, and we still simply sit and watch. So first, the exterior room vanishes, or its presence becomes distant to us to the point we don't perceive it. And slowly the perception of the body also becomes part of this lucid experience of the room, the sounds of the room or from outside, the thoughts and the body. These three states keeps on becoming very lucid as we become more relaxed. Soon we enter into a stage where we are aware of the thoughts, yet we are distantly aware or even not aware of the room unless there is a loud noise from outside or something that disturbs this state. Then immediately we become alert. And this becoming alert is a natural function, since For many thousands of years, we have relied on the source of the sound primarily for our own protection. So this is deeply rooted in us. So we just have to understand that the focus shifts to the source of sound because of this functionality, that the intelligence that there is within us simply tries to help us protect ourselves. And not only in this case, the intelligence in us tries to protect ourselves in many other scenarios in life. For example, when we meet somebody new or when we go to some new place, we are filled with doubts. And this is a healthy doubt, as it is trying to help us become secure or feel secured, feel safe, because ultimately it seems that the purpose of our own mind is to protect us, to protect the body and to protect us. And this is for the continuation of the life, because life is very, very precious. And the presence of an intelligent life form is extremely, extremely rare and precious. So, the mind, obviously when there is a noise, it jumps out. And as we are seated in a space that is safe for us, we just have to take notice of this phenomenon, that the mind moves to the source of sound and slowly again comes inside or returns back to this lucid state. At first we see the surface in which there are many, many thoughts, and as we keep on watching, these thoughts, this space, the sense of body, starts becoming a little distant from us, to the point that we perceive there is thought, but we can't say what thought that is. Or we can say that this state is where we know the presence of mind is there, or the presence of thoughts and the movement of thoughts is there, but we are starting to become separate from these states. We are separated from the body, we are separated already from the reality or the surrounding where we are as soon as we close our eyes. And there is this lucid state of the thoughts, the body, the surrounding. So we're already in and starting to find ourselves in distance with these things, or separated in a way with these things. Now this separation is not 100% separation, simply our perception of these spaces, of these different phases or different objects. Simply this perception has become subdued as we go inside. In other words, we can say that these things that is around us starts to drop from us, like when we take off our clothes and we become more lighter and lighter. Likewise, we are dropping this space that we are in, we are dropping the body, the sense of the body, we are dropping the whole function of having thoughts, or let's say it simply drops. And the reality is it simply drops by itself. We don't have to do anything, we just have to sit and do nothing. And the next phase is when we enter into a space or the state where we are not aware of anything at all, neither the room we are in, nor the body, not even the thoughts. All of these spaces vanishes away. It simply evaporates, and what remains is nothingness. And in this state of nothingness, there are no stories, hence there's no identity, there is no thoughts, there is no ego, There is no memories, there is no characteristics, no emotions. There is nothing but the perception itself or the witnessing itself. In this state, whatever we are individually in our core remains intact, remains unmoving, untouched, unaffected by anything whatsoever that the mind can comprehend or can create stories out of or can understand. Because the state, the very state of nothingness, is the state of no mind as well. So if we take a look at the analogy of temple as described in the Tantra, and also as inscribed in the architecture of all the temples related to Tantra practices in India and Nepal, what we see is the deities or the idols in a naked position outside of the temple. So they are all naked, involved in earthly activities, involved in different sexual activities, which I have heard and I believe as well is the representation of our bodily state. And with the state of the body itself can feel fulfilled or satisfied with food, with sex, with celebrations. And these things related to the body are the stories of the body, and in combination with mind, which in fact aids to the state of being in body. So the body and the mind in this sense are no different. They are one thing, coexisting together, aiding one another. The body helping the mind to continue and the mind helping the body to continue. And from the another perspective or the higher vantage point, that the mind and the body is no different. The intelligence that the body possesses is the mind, and the necessity of the mind to continue on expanding its presence and to continue on existing is the body. It's the device that the mind has. And the combination of these two, including all its earthly or physical activities, are kept outside in the surrounding. As we enter the temple itself, there is nothingness. And this is exactly what happens in the meditation, is that first we lose the perception of the world, then we lose the perception of our body, then we lose the perception of the very presence of the mind. And the moment we lose the perception of the mind, the nothingness remains. Or we can even call it the eternal presence of the pure consciousness, which remains. And as we come out of this state, the very moment we come out, the exact moment we come out from this state, the mind restarts, or the mind covers this state in a way that we become unaware of this ever-present state. And the mind takes over this state. When the mind takes over this state, the identities, the ego, the connections of the mind with the body, the stories, the characters, everything starts to return back and become integrated again to the system. And we start to feel the body, we start to feel the surrounding, we start to feel the thoughts, everything that we feel normally in our daily life comes back to us. This is the first experiences that happens, where we see different states as different states. However, upon going in to this state and coming out again and again, what we discover significantly important is that the state of seeing or the state of knowing of all these states has never left in any of these states. The state of knowing or the presence of the consciousness to become aware of all these states has been always there, is always there, and will be always there. This becomes apparent because the more we go in and come out, the more we go into the nothingness and come out to the worldliness, we start to realize that in the worldliness experience we know that we are, and in the nothingness experience we know that we are as well. The very state of being is always there. We become aware of this eternal presence. But the catch here is, if we have not reached to this empty space, or if we have not reached to this nothingness space, then we are identified mostly with the body and the ego, with the stories of the mind. Then we can be influenced. And it has been known in the human history that if a person's mind can be given a certain idea again and again and again, and it keeps on repeating in the mind, then that person, that individual, starts to believe that this given idea is his own idea or her own idea. It becomes to the point that the idea becomes so much attached with the individual that the individual is willing to involve in any sort of activities to try and protect that. And it can even call for a unrest state between different individuals. It can even call for violence, and does not matter how much we talk about peace and non-violence and brotherhood and sisterhood and love and kindness throughout the humanity, just because that the human mind is programmable, and it has been so. It does not understand that certain programming that has been going on in the individual is causing all the violence and unrest state between different individuals or different groups. But if an individual has seen this empty space and come out and went back in and come out again and again and realizes what that individual is in its totality, and totality is when one reaches to this nothingness and understands the presence of this pure emptiness inside of that individual, then the clarity of life becomes prominent, and the individual starts to understand what is that the individual is looking for, who that individual is, and how his mind or her mind or their mind works around, catches ideas, catches stories, and how it identifies with these stories and tries to not lose of these identities. But if the individual has gone inside, or let's say the practitioner of meditation has gone inside and seen this, then what starts to happen is, once a human being finds this eternal empty state or shunyata, nothingness, the peace experienced in that state, the eternal bliss and the eternal presence experienced in that state starts to pour out from the core of that state to the external realities of that individual, or the internal peace starts to flourish outwards. So this is the difference between a person who has gone in and found this Shunyata, the emptiness, and came out and seen the world, and the person who has never been in and only has seen the world. This is the difference. And alongside with this, what is also realized by this individual is that as soon as anyone encounters this internal empty space and starts to come out and see how that individual's own mind is made up of all these stories, or how all different stories and ideas starts coming back and integrating, as this process is seen, the individual also realizes that this is how it is indeed for every other single human beings in the planet. And the process, what happens is in the first stages of understanding this emptiness and finding the internal silence, the mind of the individual starts wishing, why don't the whole world start to meditate or find this state? Because this gives this individual certain peace that this individual wants to share. And after more practices of going in and out, we start to realize that even though this state is there and is achievable, we cannot force this state to anyone else, because by force, people don't enter inside. The reality is, even by love, people don't enter inside. So, trying to force this path of going in and out becomes an act of violence, because we are directly hitting to the pre-existing ideas of a person, that the ideas that the person has is his own identity, his own ideas, and we're trying to say that this is not their ideas and the reality is different. And this, this is true, that there is an internal space without any stories, any ideas, and that is the core of the reality of every individual. While this is true, it is also true for that individual who has never gone inside. It is true equally for that individual that the ideas that the individual has is entirely true. So, in Tantra, this is where we start to understand that the presence of the truth is also truth, and the presence of the false is also truth. Ultimately, the state of being present itself is the truth. And by entering inside into this emptiness and coming out, by doing this constantly, we start to realize that as soon as we come out from this empty space, the moment we come out, the duality starts. So there's the presence of both sides of the reality equally and with equal might and power. And they interfere with each other, and they keep on pulling on each other, and this constant cosmic day and night, and the fight of the good and the evil, and the love and the hatred keeps on continuing. And the more we emphasize that us humans should be looking forward to the non-violence and become loving and compassionate, the more we talk about this, the more we hide, or we try to push away the negative side or the other side of this duality, and we try to act as if they don't exist, or we try to act in a way that we try to push them towards the depth of our own realities, and again to the depth of our own individual existence. And since we don't acknowledge them, the negativity that we don't acknowledge about ourselves starts to manifest itself in many different forms in our daily life. And this can be a simple thought of being angry with somebody. to blasting out with our colleagues, friends, lovers. And this can be as simple as simply shouting at a family member to causing global violence of wars. And all of things that we have not acknowledged or witnessed inside and understood the presence of both, and the state where none of these things in the duality exists, meaning reached to the nothingness. Without knowing all these three states, the duality, left, right, and nothingness, an individual cannot find internal peace. And again, this can only be happening inside individual, and this does not happen with a group mind, because only an individual can enter inside of his own being. For example, I cannot enter inside your existence. I cannot perceive how you perceive. No matter how long you give me your stories, no matter how long you compassionately, very lovingly tell me your stories, I cannot experience it. I cannot be who you are, and you cannot be who I am. So what we can do is sit in silence and watch inside our own reality, go inside our own selves and find this nothingness state and experience the presence of nothingness together. And in reality, only this state of nothingness is same. There is no two states of nothingness between anybody. There are 8 billions to 9 billions different ideas in the planet, different experiences, individual experiences in the planet, but there is only one non-dual state that everyone can experience. This is the state of meditation. And the analogy of being completely naked is not the nakedness of the body, which we all can do. It is just the degree of cultural differences. In the north, there is a system of sauna where friends and family gather in completely naked, sit in the warmth, converse about daily life, share daily stories. And it is a totally normal thing to be there without any clothes, which is not a normal thing to the people in the south, where there are more hot and temperate regions. But this is normal for the people in the north, where there is cold regions throughout half of the year, with more dark nights and more snow. So they have this intimate gathering in there. Being in a state of being naked like that takes a little bit of encouragement. Yet, if this encouragement is a cultural thing, it does not take so much to become naked in front of others. The kind of nakedness I'm talking here is the analogy of becoming completely naked psychologically, not for the others, but for our own experience internally. And this again means to drop not just the clothes, which is the fabric to protect the body, take off the body and take off the mind. And this is the state of what they call Digambara, or the whole body of the existence is the body of the person, or the whole sky itself is the cover of a person. And when the sky is analogy of nothingness, simply emptiness, and when we encounter this emptiness inside, then the Digambara, the state of Digambara, is achieved, just like any other deities and any other name forms that people have given in the East in terms of Tantra or Yoga. These are the names to be embodied. We become those names, the state of those names, just like Christ consciousness is the Krishna consciousness, is the Shiva consciousness, the Buddha consciousness, and so on. these states can be embodied, and the embodiment of nothingness is the same for everyone who experiences it. Too much word. Let's meditate.
Dear friends, we want to publish these life-changing conversations as a book, and for that we need your help. Please leave your thoughts on our Facebook page, Maya Satsang, and also share this podcast with your friends. Every thought is valuable and every share counts.